During a recent incident that occurred at a commuter train station in Oakland, California, in which a flash mob of over 60 young gangbangers took part in a robbery of innocent civilians, one person stood out as the lone hero on that day. Faced with the overwhelming odds, the young man stood up from his seat in one of the train cars, to challenge the scumbag hoodlums, who were in the act of beating a few older riders senseless. Apparently, some of these persons on board were a bit slow or reluctant to turn over their money and valuables to the ruthless thugs, who were demanding they comply immediately, or face a wrath of heavy-handed violence. No sooner had this threat been made when there was a swift volley of smacks to the faces of several senior citizens, riding the train that day. 2 women in their 60s and an elderly man were punched so hard by a couple of the gang members, they fell down on the floor of the train car with blood streaming out of mouth and nose. How it started, as police later explained in a statement to the media, had been due to an overflow of young troublemakers, who had been attending a loud house party, near the Coliseum Bay Area Rapid Transit BART station in East Oakland, and were forced to flee police, who had arrived with orders to break up the unlawful event. Just out of the blue, the youths, still angry about the party being shut down, hatched a plan to invade the nearby BART station in order to rob the train riders of their cash and cell phones. They figured this would be an easy target for their nefarious scheme. Once this gang got inside the station, they entered the train platform by jumping over the fare gates to avoid paying the entry fee, then they quickly ran to a waiting train and held the doors open in order to make a quick escape, after they had succeeded in robbing passengers. What these young criminals had no idea about was how one of the individuals on the train at the time, a 27-year-old white male who was an ex-Marine, would take many of them on single-handedly. It came as quite a surprise to the gangbangers that an unarmed Caucasian fellow, whose name was Nathan Ryan, would oppose their evil plot and stand alone to take them all on. What the Oakland punks did not know is this young white man had served his country and was a true patriot with honors. Furthermore, he was a martial arts expert and knew how to defend himself against great odds. Since he worked out on a daily basis, Nathan was in top physical shape. Another aspect about this ex-soldier is, he followed a strict spiritual path that allowed him to call upon unseen forces that helped give him the courage to oppose his enemies. To this end, Nathan always wore a silver chain around his neck with a special crystal amulet attached. Then, when there were great dangers present, he would call upon beings from the spiritual realm to assist him. It was on this particular night, when he found himself at the center of the turmoil caused by the young gangbanger thugs who boarded several BART commuter train cars intending to rob the riders. A wave of fear passed over the passengers when they realized there were dangerous criminals on board holding out guns and knives in a threatening manner. In a sheer panic, a young woman and her child both screamed loudly at the sight of the menacing bandits only to receive the harsh backhand by the leader of the group. It was at the sight of this violent act against a mother and her daughter that Nathan Ryan suddenly bolted into action and managed to catapult his entire body through the mid-air, into the aisle by grasping the hand railing on the back of a seat. As he vaulted silently at great speed, his feet quickly came into contact with the back of the gang leader's head, knocking the brute out instantly. Recognizing this threat, 3 other gangbangers in close proximity began to move in to shoot and stab Nathan. The first one swung wildly with a Bowie knife in an attempt to cut the ex-Marine's throat only to be repelled by a swift swivel kick by Nathan that knocked the blade clear out of his hand. Out of fear of being punched silly by what he considered to be a wild man, the young punk ran to the exit and departed the train car. The other 2 adversaries who came nearer to Nathan, did not flinch so easily. Since they came from both sides, they figured they had him boxed in. One of the lads had a gun and the other was carrying a small hatchet which he held over his head ready to strike at the patriot. However, before these 2 criminals could act, Nathan went down to the floor lunging at the pair, and before they could harm him, he grabbed their ankles causing them to slip and fall over. The fellow with the pistol fired off several rounds in all directions but missed hitting Nathan altogether. Since the firearm was out of ammunition at this point, the assailant retreated to the end of the car and ran out the exit at lightning speed. In regard to the thief with the hatchet, this punk ended up with a broken wrist and was pinned to the ground by the ex-Marine. While the lad was in this position, he kept hollering in a loud whining voice claiming that he was a minor of age 17 and had been wrongfully attacked by an adult perpetrator much bigger than him. Those passengers still in the car crouching down afraid of getting shot with a gun or attacked with a sharp instrument, were able to dispute this claim after police officers arrived on the scene. After this incident, the Bay Area Rapid Transit came under fire by the media for refusing to release the video footage that had been collected by onboard cameras so all the gangbangers who managed to get away might be identified and brought to justice. One of the reasons for the refusal, cited by a spokeswoman, referred to a policy by which the Public Transit Authority did not want a certain racial minority to be misrepresented in the media as one that is always associated with crime. Many citizens were angry about this policy, stating that the BART administration cared more about ruthless criminals than they did about the victims of crimes. As far as Nathan Ryan, he made history that day and was championed by so many of the local news stations as a real hero. Words of praise came from all across the country. However, the single mother of the gangbanger whose wrist was broken by the ex-soldier, decided to sue him in court over allegations that he attacked the youth first, and was demanding $2 million in damages. This case was eventually thrown out of court by the judge, as having no legal merit, and was cited as just a trick, to try and gain a windfall of money, by taking advantage of the justice system.